The text I would bring to you today is from Mark chapter 2, and it's the story of Jesus calling a man named Levi to be his disciple. It's from Mark chapter 2, beginning at verse 13. Once again Jesus went out beside the lake. A large crowd came to him, and he began to teach them. As he walked along, he saw Levi, son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," Jesus told him, and Levi got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were eating with him and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. When the teachers of the law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with the sinners and the tax collectors, they asked his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said to them, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." There's a lot of things wrapped up in this passage, but what I want to look at today is the two different groups of characters, because oftentimes we might be able to identify with one of these two groups. The first group of characters is the tax collectors and sinners, and these are people who've done things they're not proud of. These like prostitutes, things like that. The tax collectors were not just people who collected taxes. These were Jews who were collecting taxes on behalf of the Roman Empire, the occupying forces. And so they were essentially traitors to their blood brothers, the Jews. And so that's why they were hated so much, not just because they collected taxes, but because they collected taxes they were Jews collecting taxes for the Romans. And so Jesus comes and he calls them to be his disciples, and he eats with them and has dinner with them, and so there's something for us. Sometimes you might feel like you've done something so bad God can't love you, or you haven't lived well enough for God to love you, or maybe you know God loves you, but you don't feel like you're quite where God could actually use you in his kingdom, or do something through you because of the life you've led or the way you think or whatever. This text puts the lie to all of that, because here's Jesus, and he walks up there, and there's the blood traitor Levi, and Jesus walks up to him and says, "Follow me," and then he goes and has dinner at his house. And dinner at someone's house is a sign of a fellowship with them. It's not just like we might have a dinner. And so if you identify with people who have done things they're not proud of, or that kind of thing, then this text speaks to you and tells you again that God loves you and welcomes you and desires nothing but the very best for your life. So don't run away from him, turn to him. The other group of people that you might be able to identify with are the Pharisees. And the Pharisees really got into their rules. And the reason they did is because they felt like they could earn God's favor, and if they were good enough for long enough, they might merit God's intervention to throw off the Roman Empire. And so they saw being good enough as a way to earn God's intervention in their life. And so when people were doing this, and especially when teachers like Jesus were teaching people and giving the example, the Pharisees were very upset, because they felt like they were leading people away from what was ultimately going to bring about freedom from the Roman Empire. But the problem is they had cast away love and held on to their rules. And Jesus got on their case at other times about this, and so that's maybe somebody you might identify with, whether it's specific in the practice of your Christian faith, or just in your life in general. If you have gotten to a place where you're more about the rules, and you notice people not following the rules and not doing things right, and it kind of gets in you, and gosh, you know, if you've gotten to a judgmental place like that. This is a text that speaks to you, because here is Jesus telling the Pharisees exactly why he's here, and it's not to call righteous people, but to be with sinners. And so if you're judging people by who they hang out with, Jesus would probably incur your harshest judgment because of the kind of people he hung out with. And if you think about the way you judge people, and you would judge Jesus harshly, you probably need to reconsider your idea of judgment and how and why you judge people and the way you look at them. And I think in this text, if we watch Jesus long enough and could be in that room, he would even be trying to convince those Pharisees that they were really as soul sick as the tax collectors and sinners, and that they needed the new life he offered them also. So if you feel like you can't be used by God, you're wrong. God can and will use you. Turn to Him, and don't run away from Him. Run toward Him. And if you've gotten to a place of being a judgmental person, you can back off that and see this text as an encouragement to return to the idea of love instead of judgment based on rule following. Have a great day.